I kind of hope C9 clap EG because I'm a contrarian and I'm sick of seeing this like anti-C9 stuff for no reason.
Hello and welcome to The Dive, Season 7, Episode 18.
Dun, ba, dun, bum, bum.
Mark, tell us about the interns.
The interns. There's riot interns here today. They're all over the place. Maybe hard to get my bagel this morning. I hate them. All bright-eyed and excited about life.
This bagel
Get out of my way.
Interns.
It's Monday morning and I'm tired. Don't be excited to be here.
I like how this was an unironic topic though. When he came, he's like, "These goddamn interns! I want to go get a bagel, and they're eating the bagels. What are they doing?"
Monday morning at 9 a.m. There's usually
They put out new bagels, and then they wanted more bagels.
There's no one in the cafeteria, and then they're just swarming like a pack of seagulls.
Yeah, they're having breakfast, Mark.
Get out of here!
Those bagel-eating interns!
Normally, no one's there, and I can just swoop in and grab whatever I want. Now there's lines and other people.
This man came in here munching on a dry, plain bagel with no cream cheese.
Not toasted.
No nothing. Looking like a psychopath.
Not even an everything bagel like that. Just a plain, untoasted bagel. That's what they did to me today.
Tastes
That
like
was
sadness.
some psycho shit, I swear to God.
That's why I'm saying I'm unhinged because of them. Normally I would have put something on it. Spray it with some Pam.
Yeah.
What?
No, I don't do that.
I was like, you want to talk about psycho shit? I was like,
Have you guys not tried a Pam bagel?
I was just going along for a second. I was like, excuse me?
I swear, try it. You take some Pam, you spray it on your bagel, pop it in the oven.
I've
get
heard
back
of
to
people
me.
doing stuff like that. They're like, yeah, it's just like olive oil. You just spray it on instead of olive oil as a drizzle. And I was like, that's some weird.
I didn't even know like that even still exists. I thought that was like some 80s stuff. Like,
What?
You don't put ketchup on your
Pam?
bagel?
Really?
Like the spray butter stuff? That's what that is, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's just like you can use it on your pan, right? Just like grease your pan. People use it like that.
Yeah, I do that instead of butter because it's 0 calories when I'm baking and
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah.
It's not bad. It's not like a bunch of toxic
Yeah, it might kill you. I don't know.
stuff in there.
Not that I know of.
I think
Like,
I'm pretty sure
Haven't died
everything.
so far.
There's this thing called life, and it ends with death, and there's just like all this stuff in the middle.
Yeah.
And like, what killed you? I'm like, everything kills you. Actually,
Yep.
it's called living.
Pam's
Living
in the
kills
middle.
you.
It's there.
Okay, anyways, really good opening, guys.
Yeah.
We really killed that
yeah.
one. So Arena, have you guys been playing Arena?
I played a little bit. I played with you as well. I thought it was fun. I enjoyed it. I would play more if I had someone to play with, but I don't think I would ever queue up for this mode.
I
by
heard you
myself.
had Mark to play with, and apparently
Yeah, I had
you guys
fun.
just trolled each other and just lost a whole bunch.
I told Mark I would play more with him this weekend. And he's like, "Yeah, I don't know, we'll see," you know. And then like, I was like, "Hey, Mark, you want to play some games?" He's like,
This conversation did happen. People invite me to
you
think.
know.
All right. This is a multi-layered answer here now. I had a lot of fun together. I did accidentally troll you, and you accidentally trolled me a little bit.
Yeah.
Because you hadn't played before, so you
"Yeah,
just like
I
didn't.
didn't know any of this stuff."
Accidentally.
Well, yeah,
Troll.
his was not accidental. It's just like he hadn't played the mode before, so he didn't know where the fruit was or like what all like
Okay,
Pike does.
yeah,
and all these-
that's not accident. That's
Yeah, but he's like not controlling the fruit with me. And I'm like, God, get the fruit, Azael. And then
Yeah.
I was playing Lilia, and I got the one that doubles your health based off your mana, or gives you half your mana as
Yeah,
health.
yeah.
Confused with the one that's a summoner spell that you stand there and channel your health and
the
mana.
warm
back.
up thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I wasn't reading
He
it
was
very.
like,
So
"I
you-
got this one. I'm gonna be so tanky. It's so OP." I'm like, "Sweet."
And then he flashes in place or something.
No, then I start
No, it was
channeling,
like
and
3
then it
rounds later,
super
he's
sucks
like,
on
"Oh, I
Lilia
didn't get
because
this."
you can't even kite because they get rid of your kitey summoner for that one, so you can't even kite anymore. So I'm just like, wait, this is so turbo ass. And then like, not only did it not get the one I thought I got, it actually made me weaker too.
Yeah.
So anyways, we trolled each other. I also, when someone invites me for plans, and like a lot of times people are like, yeah, maybe, dude. I don't do that. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. When someone's like, you know, that kind of like, we should hang
Yeah,
out
no,
sometime.
you say maybe to me though all the time.
Well, that's like but you could tell I wasn't going to play with you this weekend. You knew I wasn't playing.
He literally just said he does the opposite of what he.
Yeah.
But my
He's like, "But I
intentions-
don't do that.
my
I don't do
intentions
that."
are
I'm like,
clear.
"You literally just did
My
that."
intentions were so clear that I was not playing with you with how I answered it. My intentions are clear.
You know how people.
You literally just lied.
You know how people say.
When people do
You
the
have people say, "Maybe, dude, I would never do that."
But
Mark literally on Friday, "Hey, Mark, you want to play some arena this weekend?" "I don't know, maybe, dude."
His example.
But did you think I was actually ever going to queue with you this weekend?
"I don't know, maybe, dude."
Be honest. I'm saying when people invite you to things and you give like the honest like, oh yeah, that could happen. When I say that, you know, there's no chance in
You're
hell.
literally the example of that person.
Yeah.
No,
All right.
I swear to God, if you invite me to something and I just,
But you know.
I'm not going.
When he does it, you know, though. That doesn't
Azael Azael knew I was not playing because you started this whole story saying how my intention was clear that we weren't going to play together when you asked.
Oh shit.
You started. You can't even go back to the VODs, watch it again. It's clear based off what Azael said that my intentions were obvious. I was not going to play with him this weekend.
I don't know, maybe,
Okay.
dude.
The VODs will speak the truth. I was clear in my intention when you invite me to do something, if I'm coming or not.
No, I don't agree with that.
I love this too, and you're like, oh yeah, we were intentionally trolling each other. No, sounds like it was just incompetence on both sides, accidental.
Yeah, we can go there.
I think the mode is fun. What I was complaining about was I don't like how powerful the fruit is. I think
the fruit are the only objective in the game.
I know.
To, like make it.
But I guess it just feels like there's certain things, like for example, we played against a Twitch that had that like the bonus range stuff and whatnot.
Twitch is busted.
And so it's
Yeah.
like, and we're playing some like double melee thing, and Twitch just opens up first global of the game, ulting you from across the map, and then just pops the little ghosty thing and runs away to a fruit, and then has ult again. And you're just like.
And the spray and pray hits the fruit. So if you're like, if you're camping the fruit, he just shoots the fruit from range. Yeah. And like you get hit too, and you're like, okay.
So to me, that it's just like the fruit is cool. I'm cool with the fruit, but I think the fruit should be.
By the way,
a heal.
If you listen to us before we turn on the recording, he's not cool with the fruit.
I don't like
it's the ult
hates
cooldown.
the fruit.
No, this is my. I think it should either be the heal or the cooldown. It's not both.
I think
it's you need an objective, like you say. You don't want people just like stuck in a corner with all their traps or whatever. But it just felt like. I felt like it took away from the actual fight. It's like, oh, I'm fighting this guy. I'm like dodging his stuff. I'm hitting my stuff, but he's getting all the fruit. So like, I'm like, oh, okay. You have to adjust and you just prioritize the fruit. It's like, oh, fruit's spawning. I'm about to kill this guy. Who cares? Time to run for the fruit. You know, it's just like, it just feels kind of weird to me. It feels like.
I think the only thing I don't like is the ult cooldown on some champs, just because it's so obnoxious for something like a Twitch and things like that. But otherwise, I'm pretty chill with it. I like the fruit breaking things up, making you run around.
Yeah. I had a lot of fun with the mode. I played it with a couple of different friends. Played with Medios also like before the event that happened. And the only like thing that caused me not to play so much anymore is one, like I feel like you have to have a friend to play with. Playing it. Or at least for me, playing it by myself.
I played a couple solo. I didn't have that much fun.
I haven't even queued up solo because I know I'm not gonna enjoy that without a buddy. And the other thing is, it's hard to balance when you're trying to balance pairs. There's really big like win rate discrepancies because
AD plus supports.
Some of the combinations are really crazy. And then the other thing I can see people complain about is some specific combinations, like if you RNG roll some specific augment with a champion, like sometimes those can get turbo out of control. But I feel like that's part of the fun too.
Yeah,
It's supposed to be
broken.
This element of you can create something really extreme and broken, and you can feel kind of like a mad scientist sometimes.
Yeah, I think that it has that initially, but I think the problem with that is if you're releasing it only as ranked, like it's not a for fun mode because it's kind of ranked, you know, which I think that was kind of weird. Like I just feel like it should have just been released as a normal mode, let you queue up with all your friends. Like that would be so much fun to queue up with like 4 people, 6 people, 8 people, whatever, and you're just fighting all your friends and stuff. And then you could do like, okay, we're not going to do any ADCs. We're not going to do any of these combos. You could do whatever. But I know from some of my friends who play all the time, their frustration with the mode is now that it's like everyone knows what the best combo is. Everyone only queues the most OP pairs of champions and only goes for very specific augments and feels like you lose the game if you don't hit those specific augments and someone else does. And then it's like, okay, well at that point then they need to make changes, which I know they are doing some balance stuff.
Well, it's not just balance stuff too. They like the custom lobbies thing is something that they just ran out of time for.
Yeah.
And they're going to add that. And so as long as people are playing the mode, I think there'll be more functionality like that coming because I think everyone's like, clearly I should be able to play with 8 friends, you know, and I think they're like, yeah, duh, we're going to work on that too. So I'm excited for that kind of stuff. For me, I just didn't log into League at all this weekend. I haven't played League in like 2 weeks now because I always get bored and I want to like work on little side projects. So I've just been grinding on some side projects for fun. But I did like the mode a lot.
I had fun with it as well.
Yeah, I played solo because I'm a masochist, and you know, you get cubed with someone who they don't know what they're doing, and you know, you just hate your life.
Then you're gonna start raging.
Oh yeah. That's the fun.
I get all my rage in ranked solo queue. So,
I like things that bring an emotion out of me: sadness, happiness, anger. League is really good about bringing the anger out. It's a really good art form. Like, has any other art form made you feel as angry as League?
I was actually having this exact conversation with a bunch of my friends on Discord because I had a moment this last weekend where I yell a lot, and obviously Travis lives right next to me, and Travis is like, "You're getting really extreme with how upset you're getting in some of these ranked games now," and I'm like, you know what? I've been playing this game for like 12, 13 years or something. So I'm not surprised.
You're
So
still
you
not
still
dead
care.
inside.
Yeah.
So I would have thought it would be the opposite. It's interesting, right? Because for me, it's like when people talk about like the extreme emotions that they feel in games. Like when I played WoW, at first I used to be like really like sweating in games and really frustrated. But then it's like I played so much that I stopped caring if I lost or won in the individual games. It didn't bother me as much. You know what I mean? So it's interesting that you're like having that opposite experience where it's like feeling more extreme.
I think one of the things is because when you play a lot, your brain gets wired to expect dopamine because you know you're in a position to win.
Yeah.
If somebody makes a mistake and then you don't win and you don't get that, like as a veteran player, you get so mad, right? Because you expect this and this and this to happen, and if it doesn't, yeah.
So you need to go on a detox.
Probably, but I don't think I can.
That's called addiction.
I actually don't think I can. When I go on vacation, I cannot wait to get back home to my computer, and I have to like, even if I'm gonna play another game, like, you know, new Path of Exile League gonna come out or something, I still have to fit some League of Legends like ranked games in because I like feel that craving.
That's funny. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I play League a lot. I don't play a lot of ranked anymore. I just find the team ranked where you don't control your team, I find it really frustrating.
Yeah.
Like I find that in general, it's like there's some games it's different because it's like, wow, it was a team game, but you chose your team, so it's not really the same at all. I played a lot of Dota 2 ranked. That was, I guess, maybe one of the only games I played a ton of besides League. It was those two that like you can't choose your team. But besides that, most of the games that I like really grinded ranked on were all solo games. What is that? There's a sound
Is your
coming
laptop?
up. Oh, I guess it's unmuted. Is there like an ad playing or something? My bad.
Just mute it.
Everything has been open the whole time, so something just started playing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's like that is the uniquely frustrating thing about League is you can't control your teammates and you can't choose. And so it's like I've always felt like you have to be willing if you're going to grind a lot of League rank, just accept that there is like 30% of the games are just garbage games and you can't control the result, and those are just in the trash, and you have to control the other 70% that you can
Having
control.
good mental is a huge part of especially climbing solo queue for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the thing I miss is like CS pubs, where it's not ranked, so obviously people are just like slightly different attitude, but I think the voice comms added a lot to just hard trolling with people and like having fun with it as you kind of like run it down. It's your whole team's just like Russian A, shotties only, you know, just being idiots. And like I think no voice comms make it harder to just be a dumbass in league games.
It's interesting because I completely understand both sides of the argument. Because I now have got to the point where I just play full mute. I just have that perma setting of like party only or whatever for chat. So I was like, I don't want to see anything any of these idiots are saying to me ever. Even the pings sometimes can cause me to tilt. So I definitely don't want to hear them opening their mouths. But I also am on the other side of like some of my best memories were when like Xbox Live comms first came out.
Oh yeah,
doing like Halo comms with people and stuff is so funny.
I mean, I've always just felt like if it's opt-in, there's no issue with it, right? Because you don't have to opt into it. I don't have to opt into it. I'm definitely not doing it.
The social pressure of not opting in.
I don't really care about that at all. I feel no pressure. Because they're gonna be deafened. I'm not even gonna be hearing their complaining in chat. So I think there's no problem having it. I will also say though, like I said, I played a ton of Dota 2 ranked in the past, and I got really high ranked in that game. But I had almost zero positive voice comms experiences in that game, and that game has voice comms. It was like just mostly people only used it to scream at people or to yell horrible things and things like that. Or
that's just the Dota 2 community. League of Legends is not like that.
Just a paragon of.
It would be a very different experience, I'm sure.
People also loved playing extremely loud noises over their microphones and things like that.
Yeah.
So they just wait until you're in the middle of a fight or you're trying to concentrate, and then it's just, you know, like.
I love that stuff, dude. That kills me when you have someone with a soundboard. You're playing with Obama or something, like I just love that stuff.
But I mean, some of them would be funny,
funny.
but some of them, like he's saying, because I was in those too. Some of them would just be these screech noises,
Yeah, I know.
or like
it's like an alarm or something.
yeah.
Someone did one where they played like the beep from your fire alarms being like low on batteries, They just play troll stuff.
Something like that is kind of funny. That's different, right? Or the knock knock.
Yeah, the knock
When
knock.
people have knocking on the door, people get so scared. That stuff is so funny.
Oh god, yeah.
But either way, I played with it a lot in those games, and I got to the point where I just never wanted to use it anymore ever. So I know I wouldn't use it in League if it was in League.
Same.
So it doesn't really bother me either way. But I also feel like for the people who do want it, opt-in would be cool. But at this point, it just feels like they've kind of dug in their heels and they're never going to do it.
Yeah.
Which I don't really get because it's in Valorant.
Yeah.
Same
Yeah,
company.
I mean,
Like you said, having the option and having everybody be able to turn it off, like you can turn off the
there's
chat.
literally party voice chat already in the game.
Yeah.
So I don't really get it, but whatever.
Yeah, it's tech reasons probably. I don't know.
think it's tech reasons.
Yeah,
I
tech
feel like
reasons.
it's-
You just say if you're a multi-billion-dollar company, here's what you do: tech debt. Then you wave the problem away. There's too much.
Okay.
There's too much of a burden
Okay.
to fix it. To add
You
that
guys just wouldn't
functionality.
understand how
Yeah, no.
complex
There's
it is.
there's code, and we'd have to look at it. And we don't really want to do that right now. So
Voice chat is it's too
Are you a
complex.
programmer?
No.
Oh wait, you are a programmer? You still wouldn't understand. Never mind.
It's a different system,
it's a very big library, and no one's looked at it in 5 years, and we're not going to pay someone to look at it
Yeah.
now. So tech
True.
debt.
All right, playoffs. Shall we move on to playoffs?
Yeah, screw this top
Sure.
lane. Yeah, we don't.
Yeah, the whole top lane conversation, like that little point, was just going to be about Aatrox anyways.
Yeah. Well, now I feel like now that we talked about it, should we talk about it?
No, we'll talk about it in the context of
Okay.
TSM
We can
Dig.
weave it in. You know,
Okay.
we got some skills here. Let's weave it into the.
All right, the Thursday match is going to be Dig versus TSM. Potential for it to be the last ever TSM games played in the LCS if they lose.
Yeah.
Now that they're in the lower bracket, obviously, if you lose, you're donezo, and that would be. I feel like it's guaranteed. I don't know. I mean, they tweeted that they were going to a different league and stuff, but then some people are like, well, it's not a done deal until it's a done deal. So I'm like, well, aren't they leaving?
I mean, it's definitely it's not official, but man, there is so much conversation like behind.
Well, and TSM themselves made the whole announcement that they were
Yeah.
leaving, right? So I thought that was.
Yeah,
I'll wait until it's official,
Yeah.
but
it'd be really awkward next
it's
year.
definitely very unofficial.
If they walk back into the cafeteria with their food and they're like, "Hey, can we sit with you guys again?" It's gonna be really awkward. But I
realize there's a TV controller here.
don't-
Nice, see what's on.
I think it's that. I think that's what's on. Is the dive looping graphic.
Looks good.
I do think, regardless of that, this is a really close matchup. I think the TSM series versus EG, it did go a full 5 games.
Yep.
It was technically close, and we were debating this a little bit.
Technically close.
Well, because it's a 5-game series, but it was also the fastest full 5-game series, I think, in NA history.
Yep. I heard globally.
I heard globally too, but then I didn't double check that, so I didn't want to say it. But that might be true as well.
So I feel like it was actually close also, but you should finish. Your
Yeah.
point.
So it was the fastest one, meaning all the games were sub 30 minutes, and usually in 5-game series, there's late game contestation for Dragon, and that's what I think a close game is to me, is when either person could win that game. And here, there was never a time where either team could have won the games. It felt like that they were losing past 15 minutes. So it wasn't like a close series by standard definition. Again, it was in the sense that, it went 5 games.
But that feeling is because TSM stomped game number 1. What
Yes.
was it? 25 minutes.
Doesn't that mean that it was a close series,
series, yeah.
but not close games?
So-
that's what I would say. I think it was a close series. I just think the individual games were not close because it was 5 stomps, basically.
Yes. But I also think, and this is maybe going to be contentious, I think the fact that this was a close series hinged on a couple things where if you replayed it, it would not be close again. I think
Like the
one,
Lucian counterpick and
the
stuff.
Lucian counterpick mid game 1 was great, and I don't want to punish people for hey, you only won that game because you did something troll or cheesy or something. It's that was a really smart counterpick
And won that game
nice
because you
level
prepared
1.
your picks and bans.
Yeah, it's
for
you
game
did you
one of
guys
a
your job
playoff
real
series,
good.
and then you executed well on it and made it work in game.
Right, and then that's like that one opening salvo was great.
Like I said, lucky.
But it's something that's it's not necessarily repeatable. And then the other thing was there was some shenanigans going in the top lane with the draft around the Rumble.
Yep.
And even though they won game 2, the Jax counterpick into Rumble looked terrible, and it was only because Revenge got spoon fed some kills initially that he was able to get to that 18 kill game, but he was down like 30, 40 CS in the lane. And then they just opted into it again game 4, and they could have gone a control mage, but then they slammed the Yone. And it's like, okay, this ended up being a very bad draft where you counterpick yourself in one lane.
Instead of Sejuani, so they couldn't actually kind of bail themselves out of
right,
that lane.
the Sejuani and Jax is obviously way stronger with double solo lanes that are melee. And so, like, I don't know, they just kind of trolled their draft, it felt like, a little bit in game 4.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, while yes, all the games, it was 5 games, none of them were particularly close. Oftentimes it felt like due to draft reasons that could have been easily avoided by, I think, EG, or game 1 was, again, really good TSM prep that you can't just necessarily do again. So I felt like if you replayed this series, I think EG would win 3-1 maybe and look a lot more dominant in that 3-1, because anytime that they, I don't know. This is maybe cope for EG fans and maybe TSM hate or whatever, but honestly, that's how I feel looking at this series. Is I don't think it would be that close playing it again.
I think it's an interesting take. I will say the positive side of this for me for TSM was that I was kind of starting to feel like, oh God, Hanser really doesn't have a second champion beyond Renekton that he can do well on. Well, he did well on the Rumble, right? He was actually, his laning was good. And I felt like the second Jax game into the Rumble was because it was kind of Hanser disrespect. It was like, this guy's not good. I'm just going to beat him anyway. You know what I mean? I'm going to play this pick. I'm going to be able to take all ins. I'm going to be able to get ahead of him, and I'm going to be able to dominate. And so the fact that it was the Renekton getting banned out every single game, and they started actually having to ban, in last game, they banned out the Renekton and the Rumble. So it's like, guess what? If he just adds like one more champion, you can't actually target ban that stuff at all. So even having that second one that people are going to have to worry about, I do think is a boon for TSM. So, that was definitely a positive that I took away from the series for them. But I can see the point of view of, hey, the Yone Poppy Jax game wasn't a great draft, and maybe they can't replicate the Lucian counter pick or whatever. But I guess I'm more positive on it for TSM.
Yeah, I feel like that's the Yone one is the only one where you can kind of get some,
and that's probably why he said
makeup
3-1,
points
right?
or whatever. The Jax thing to me, EG know that it's a losing matchup early. Like they know, Revenge knows, he's gonna go down in CS. Rumble is a massive.
But I don't think I don't think he would have thought he was going to be down that much, or he wouldn't have picked it, because he got clapped in both the lanes.
I mean, a lot of other stuff also does happen. I think they fully well knew. Yeah, like, we're going to sacrifice some early lane phase stuff. We're going to be able to outscale. He's going to be a really strong split pusher that also has team fighting options. Obviously, they would want it to go a little bit better than it did.
Because wasn't it like 30 or 40 CS in both games?
Yeah. And there was a lot of extra jungle attention up there.
Yeah.
There was so much looking towards top lane in this series. So I think a lot of these are like don't require a revision maybe, except for possibly the game 4 one.
And it's not revision to me. It's just saying that, like, okay, like anything can happen in the realm of possibilities. This stuff can happen. I just don't think that this one would happen that many times. And so that's why going into their next series against Dig, I want to see more, because the thing also about the revenge situation, I was trying to pull it up quickly, but he's also like 2-18 versus Renekton all time. And just like, I think a lot of people would just open both Renekton and I know a lot of people have been banning it
Every
against
single
TSM.
team has banned it.
Every single team has banned it against.
Unbanned a single game since
against
he played
TSM
the
because
streak.
people think that he's a one trick for Hanser.
Yeah.
But I think also a lot of people in playoffs would be like, okay, you'll get your one trick. We'll do this thing into it. Or we'll take it away, and Revenge doesn't want to play that game. So I think there's a lot of things that led to that, and I wonder what Rich is going to do, because Rich will probably just open all and then like just slam a counter pick into Renekton like Quinn or Alawi or whatever.
That's why this matchup is really fun, because even if you don't ban the Renekton, Rich is going to go for a counter pick. Dignitas are going to go for counter pick for Rich every time that they can possibly get it. And if Hanser is not going to carry, I actually think TSM strategy with Hanser tank, even though everyone's like, oh my God, he's got the lowest, laning stats in the league, and gets pounded up there every time. I actually think that's one of the better strategies for TSM, is to just have Hanser get pounded and be on a tank and then team fight. Because they're team fighting with when they put more resources into the other lanes, especially Insanity. Like Wild Turtle, I feel like has been so good in delivering consistent teamfight carry later. If they invest early resources into Insanity, don't put anything towards the top lane, towards Hanser, I actually think that's probably a better strategy for this team. because with Insanity leading their team fights and being really proactive from mid, he actually had the highest kills per minute of anybody going into the playoffs of any single player in the LCS, because he's been so like proactive for TSM. So that's why even when they had the successful like Rumble lane phases, I was like, you can, but did you stop to ask yourself if you should?
It's like the Gwen games too, where they are putting Insanity and more on support, and then
like, and he had a Lissandra game where you're like, we can, but should we? So I'm very curious to see what TSM's approach to the Dignitas series is, with Dignitas having this extreme preference for counter picks for Rich, with the Quins, with the Alaois and stuff like that. I, at least going into the previous series, I was more worried for TSM because the Revan stuff talking about, oh my God, the players are not synced up. Everybody's, not focused anymore. They got complacent with the success that they had. And him talking last week more about how the team is so much more focused now in their alliance makes me more hopeful for them.
So the two games that they played, the first one that Dignitas won, Hanser was playing Renekton, but it was the Ruby week that Ruby was in, and then the second one they lost, and that was the last time that Hanser got Renekton, and since then it's been, I don't know, like 8, 9, whatever games in a row that's been banned against him. And Rich played the GP game against him that went really poorly, where he did the counter pick of GP. And it went really bad. So those are their two games. They obviously lost that game. Hanser was playing Renekton in that, but I don't think they lost because it was Renekton or anything. But that counter pick obviously really did not work out, and Turtle and Insanity had really good games. So I mean, it's interesting, right? Like I think that Dignitas should just ban Renekton still, because I think that they like other things are less stable, and even if you're going to go for a counter pick, there's things that you can go that are probably going to dominate it more, especially if you're expecting Hanser to get no help. I feel like resourceless champion that is really stable kind of needs the least help in a lot of cases, right? So you can maybe force them to kind of try to play towards him and have a counter pick that could be more beneficial. But I think in general, as an overall strategy, like you're saying, Kobe, it makes more sense to play through Insanity. Jensen is not JoJo. Jensen is not playing anywhere near the level that JoJo is playing, and Santorin and Jensen as a duo aren't dominating by any means. So I think that there's way more of an opportunity to attack through mid lane, and even if there were weaknesses shown by TSM or EG maybe lost game 4 because of draft and things like this, Dignitas is not nearly as good as EG, I think, either, right? Like, they don't have the same strengths.
No, I think you could go pound for pound, position by position. It's only top lane probably in Dignitas's favor, clearly.
Yeah.
Historically, Jensen versus Insanity would be Jensen, but this split in particular, it feels a lot closer. I think Boogie's been kind of like Santorin in a lot of ways, where he's very lane focused and getting people ahead, and he's really good about finding opportunities to make that happen. And bot lane, I think, for TSM is just straight up better in both roles.
Yeah. So Boogie especially, I feel like that's a good point to bring up for their TSM versus EG series. Like, he was so proactive.
He would probably have gotten player of the series if they somehow won the 5th game, I think. Boogie was really good.
Yeah.
So I do think that TSM's still favored in this series, but I
Not
wonder.
massively.
Yeah, well, it's just like that first series against EG was so weird with how dominant each game's win or loss was, that it was hard to really like get a good power level, at least for me, of like where TSM's at as they head into their next series.
Yeah.
Because maybe they really are contesting EG and they're like neck and neck with them, or they should have got blown out and didn't. I don't know.
Yeah. I just really was impressed after game number 1 of the series with the planning that TSM put into it, the draft and the execution, all of that. I was like, oh my God, they're completely back with having the previous concerns about the coach interview and everything that he said leading into it. So I'm actually really excited for this series because I want to see both teams play to what I think are their strengths. And for TSM, that is playing away from Hanser, just slap him on a tank, play to Insanity and Turtle for team fights. And I want to see Dig play to Rich. And then like see, all right, can top lane carry? How strong is top lane right now? They keep actually buffing the possible carry potential. Aatrox got mega buffed. Revenge had the massive Aatrox game versus them. I bet Rich, I could see him just itching to do that as well. That
I
win
played in the LPL.
all these types of things. So I actually want to see a clash of styles like that, where one team is like, you know what, we're not going to play around top at all, and the other team tries to win.
I guess my concern with Dignitas is, do they even really know what their style is, so to speak, or their strength is, so to speak, anymore? Because the only wins that they had down the stretch was the 100 Thieves win and then the 100 Thieves tiebreaker win. And besides that, they lost 7 out of 8 games.
And that's why Rich wasn't on my All-Pro ballot.
Right? And so Rich, I do think, showcased that he had the ability to take over some games and really carry games, but he wasn't really able to do it down the stretch. And it didn't really feel like Dignitas had a clear identity and clear way to get consistent wins at all. So that's kind of my concern. Is I know how TSM can win. I think, like you said, play through Insanity, play through Turtle, but I think mostly just play through Insanity, to be honest. I don't know that Dignitas knows how they can win. That's kind of my concern. Is it's like you beat 100 Thieves twice, once in a tiebreaker, once in the final week. Besides that, their only win in the previous 8 games was 1 win against FlyQuest.
Yeah, I think that their strategy for winning is, because their mid laner is so different. Jensen is definitely a lot less proactive than Insanity. He moves a lot less and generally scales or plays reactively while trying to scale for team fights for later. Like, he still will move to stuff if stuff happens in the early game, but he's not going to be the one starting it out. So I think they try and focus a lot of their early game stuff around Rich, who wants to be playing super forward, trying to get turret plates on top side, trying to like win skirmishes around Rift Trails and stuff like that. And then have Jensen scaling for later for team fights and see what happens there. That's why I feel like it's cool to have the mismatch of like areas on the map that you kind of want to go for these teams.
Yeah.
It is harder to win through top, but that was kind of what was exciting early about Dignitas, is that they had these extreme games where they went so hard into counter picks.
Yeah, I think the other thing cool is the history for both these teams. I talked about the TSM angle about potentially their last run through playoffs, but it's also get Jensen the Worlds. He has 8 consecutive Worlds appearances. Not only is he tied for one of the most, him and Doublelift have attended Worlds the most all time of any pro player, but for Jensen it's consecutive. And if he could do it from 7th place from this crazy run,
It'd be pretty crazy.
It'd be pretty crazy. It's probably not going to happen, but the fact that one of these two teams is going to end something about the other is a high stakes match. History will be made here in some capacity.
True.
In the lower bracket round 1.
Yeah. I also feel like, especially after seeing how good Boogie was in the previous series and how active he was, I feel like TSM also has jungle advantage here. But Santorin is super veteran, playoffs time, leading up to Worlds again, maybe you get the Hulk out moment,
I feel like it's really TSM favored, honestly.
That's why I said 4 out of 5 positions on paper are TSM favored. So I'm like, and we're like, oh, play style wise, like Chime likes to roam, Boogie likes to camp. They play through Insanity early game, and then they actually have good scaling. Like, I mean, just like
Dignitas looked really bad down the stretch to me.
Yeah.
Right? Their first half of the split I thought was more compelling.
I don't think anyone's going to predict them to win.
Yeah, I have TSM probably 3-1.
Yeah, something like that. I'll lock it in later.
I think 3-2. Make it more.
It'll be
crazy.
interesting. If Jensen, Santorin, like if those guys can step up, then I think it becomes a really compelling series. But I think they kind of failed to show any consistency down the stretch. So that's kind of why I'm doubting them right now. All right, so the Friday series
TL
is
Huno.
TL 100 Thieves. This one is going to be pretty interesting because TL is so kind of like up and down, and they had their crazy series against NRG, which was very much I think what people were expecting. I guess
5K gold throw in game 2. Let's go.
I feel like it's exactly what we talked about on a previous episode of the Dive.
Yeah, and in the LCS lounge, and
we're like, oh my god, each of these teams, 5K gold. That doesn't really mean that much here. There's so many flips, I feel like, and so many moments where someone gets picked off and you're just like, whoa, the comeback, or yo, the throw.
Especially that one. Yeah, it's sad for TL that they can't still close games out a year into this team. They did swap in APA, so it's not like the exact same lineup, but I think for most of the decision makers and people picking the fights and doing the shot calling, it's the same people. I thought Core had a bit of a down series from the fact that he was on All Pro this year.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like that was the level he played at.
And it's a perfect meta for him. There's Rel and all these engaged champions, and man.
APA also had a really bad series and looked very affected by it. Like mentally, like you could just look at the cameras. He's having huge reactions every time something went bad, and the team is comforting him when he's walking off stage.
He's dying left and right in game. If you just don't even want to look at player cams, you can just see bad decisions being made.
Yeah.
I also feel like that series was the first time where I've been like, whoa, I really feel like I just saw some comms problems like live on stage where the team is turning and he's going back, or there's definitely that missing link of like how we want to play out the fight, or are we actually turning off objective type of thing. I feel like in this series that was felt even more. And if you combine that with what you're saying about like watching the cams and some of the reactions and stuff, it does, maybe there is like a feeling of isolation there or something.
Yeah, it's hard to know what was causing it, but it also felt to me that he kind of wanted it too bad in a way where he was looking for all these big
He had some Malphite, Tristana ultimates.
He definitely had some Malphite Tristana ultimates. I mean, he had the one over by Herald, which kind of worked out, where he rock jumps in, he flashes behind the guy, he knocks him back. Yeah. But he gave up his shutdown to do that and his flash to trade 1-for-1. And then there were situations where I think he realized, okay, I made some mistakes, and it felt like he was kind of trying to make good on it by finding another big play. And I think instead of kind of waiting for some of those big opportunities to be there, he was trying to really force it. And it didn't feel as though it was really working out for him in most cases.
No, I think the big thing for why TL looked better with him instead of Harry was that he was more consistent in the mid to late game, and that was not the case in this series. And he got picked on a lot. The Tristana games where they just kept killing him over and over in the mid to late game, and he kept trying to like buffer his jump, and he would just get pulled back after the buffer.
And dying without flash.
And then dying without flash as opposed to flashing then jumping or something.
Yeah.
So he was, I don't know if it was greed. I wouldn't call it that. Most likely, I think it was nerves and just, not thinking through what's about to happen. And I think for the rest of the team, it wasn't like they were playing super well either. I think Summit was maybe the best playing player. He was able to get some advantages over Dokla and Lane, but it wasn't like...
Even him, I mean, he had his Gnar pick into the Renekton where Dokla was just basically even the whole time. Someone got ganked one time on a stacked wave, which sucked for him, but largely this was nowhere close to what I was expecting from Summit as far as levels of dominance coming into this series, because we were talking about it last week on the dive where I was saying it's literally number 1 in CSD versus number 10 in CSD. I was expecting it to be a bit of a top lane canyon in the laning phases. It really wasn't. I think there was one game, if I recall, where Summit really got the better of him. I think it was the Kennen game. He really got ahead in the 1v1.
His Jax games were okay too.
There were a lot of ganks from Pioshik in a lot of the games as well. Pioshik was definitely
living up there.
Check him jungle proximity.
It felt like that was all they wanted to do. Pioshik was only going up there. But even those two guys had some really troll ones. There was the one Jax Sejuani game where they got Monster ahead in lane, and then immediately went over towards Herald and just engaged by themselves and both died. And you're like, what is happening? But that was the Monster Jax carry game.
Yeah.
And when I talk about Summit, I think overall he had good performances. But when I say the kind of top canyon that I was expecting, I was thinking 1v1 laning. He was going to create massive, massive edges. And that didn't really happen that I can recall, except for the Kennen game. The Jax game was very much about like the coordination of him and Pioshik. And then the Gnar game, I think, was kind of just forgettable.
Yeah, there were definitely some moments too where, Dokla had a misposition or something, or you could be like, oh, he should have been more cautious here because they know he's playing weak side and, whatever happened. But like they talked about it in the interview afterwards for NRG, they're like, what your duty is this series, Dokla. and he was like, yeah, I know. So
you're going to get beat up.
He understood the mission. As far as the team approach overall, because we're talking about the NRG 100 Thieves series right now. We'll talk way more about NRG
the TL.
Yeah, we're talking about the TL.
Excuse me, the TL 100 Thieves. We'll talk about NRG later for their series. Exactly like I said for APA though, all I care about is banning out the Ziggs. They banned out Ziggs every single game this series, and I feel like without that, that's a big comfort pick. That's also way easier to play, to your point about the reliability towards the mid game and late game. So I feel like the strategy here for pick and ban also should be a pretty easy copy and paste, because they banned out that primo pick for APA, and for Summit, all they kept on banning out is the Rumble, which he can be super abusive of every single game as well.
So I think blueprint wise, I'm down if 100 Thieves wants to copy it, but so like APA was losing both sides of Trist Jace. They played that matchup both sides.
Yeah. Palafox was smurfing on him.
He was pooping on him on both sides of the matchup. He was just clearly
player of the series.
Player of the series, borderline All Pro. A lot of people felt like he was snubbed.
I voted for him.
Yep. So like
he was snubbed.
Yeah, and then you got Quid, who like no offense has really good CSing. But I don't think he can apply the same level of pressure. Like, I don't think he makes... Like, Palafox is a playmaker at the end of the day. Like, he wants to win the game. He's going to go in. He's going to see angles. And he'll in sometimes, and he'll laugh it off. But, like, he's got an aggressive mindset. And Quid sometimes does. Like, his Azir goes in, but it doesn't work out more often than it does. And, like...
And honestly, I mean, you could just be blunt about it. Palafox was borderline All-Pro. I voted for him third team. Quid is one of the worst mid laners in the league.
Yeah.
Maybe the worst mid laner in the league.
So you can copy and paste the draft strategy, but I'm not confident that Quid wins both sides of matchups and then goes and makes plays with that the same way that Palafox did.
And if he does, it's not going to be anywhere near the level of dominance, right?
And if he does, well, then hats off. We're all wrong and like good for you, but we're not.
But he hasn't shown that.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't expect it.
Yeah, I don't care who your mid laner is, though. I banned Ziggs versus APA.
Yeah,
that is my point.
Yeah.
And I think APA was trying to come into this series and prove, hey, you have to respect other picks. He had never played a professional game of Jace. They talked about it in one of the coach interviews, though, that they knew it was coming because he'd been playing a lot in solo queue, but still had not played a single game of it in pro play. Did not inspire any fear in his opponents with his Jace. It didn't really work out the way that he wanted, and I think that a lot of teams are going to watch that. And I thought it was so important for APA coming in that series, and I talked about it a lot, early on. I said everyone is going to ban the Ziggs, right? But you can unlock the Ziggs if you can prove that you can dominate on other picks and make them scared of that. That did not happen at all. So I do think that is definitely a concern for TL, is that people will try to kind of rinse and repeat. But 100 Thieves, the only way the 100 Thieves wins games is by picking late game and hoping they don't get run over, because they don't really have any proactivity on the map. I think Closer did have a good game or a couple good games in the last week. We'll see if he can kind of replicate that. But I think if Closer is not playing like playoffs Closer, if Closer is playing like regular season Closer, this team just doesn't do anything. Like, Quid doesn't really do anything. Closer doesn't really do anything. Their bot lane's okay. Their top lane's okay.
Summit got boomed out of the LCS by Closer and Someday back in 2022 spring. It can happen again.
It could.
I agree. Closer is both the problem and the solution to their early game. Like Busio's not going to roam around and make tons of plays. He's with Double Lift for the most part. Someday can win lanes, but it's not like that usually transfers around the map very well. Quid, like we already talked about, not a huge playmaker, so it does come on to Closer to step up and do what he's done in previous playoffs.
I like that phrasing.
What?
If someone is both the problem and the solution, you're just saying you need to play better.
Yeah,
because
kind of.
You are the problem. If you play better, then
there's sometimes like, oh, my lane phase isn't good, and it's not going to get better, so someone else has to come up with a solution for this. But Closer's early game can be good, and when he has a good early game, they're going to get way more. They're going to be way more proactive. So like. Yeah, just be like that Viego game, please, Closer.
Yeah. But it's the same thing we've been saying for, I feel like, a month. For 100 Thieves has been like this mid-jungle issue.
Yep. And it's obviously hard to fix. He seemed pretty unshaken. At least he presented that after the Viego game in his interview, because he got interviewed. He had the 6-0-5 Viego game where he got all those early kills. I think he got the first 4 kills of the game, 5 kills of the game, something like that.
Yeah.
And had a nice game there. And then he was on stage and basically saying he doesn't really care what people think. It just matters what he thinks. It matters what the team thinks, whatever.
That's good.
Which is, I think, the right approach to have. Absolutely. So we'll see. I mean, if he can show up and give the team some early proactivity, I do think that Double Lift was one of those guys that was playing well. And, if people were playing better around him, he could have been borderline All-Pro. He kind of put it in the same bucket as we talked about with Impact and some of the other guys. I think they have some people who can perform if they're kind of given that success around them. But it's also tough because I feel like it's kind of a mismatch for 100 Thieves, where 100 Thieves is so slow, I feel, in the early game, and they want to go really late and just go 5v5. And TL has a really explosive early game, right? And so you're talking about one of the slowest, most inactive early game teams against one of the most explosive early game teams. And yeah, TL will throw some games for sure, but I think 100 Thieves is going to have a tough time if Closer can't really step up, just even hanging in the early game, right? Because this team is not a good early game team. You know, they're averaging down 1K. TL in the regular season averaged up like over 2.2K at 15 minutes, I think it was. So
Yeah, this is one of those, it's all about perspective. Is it a bad matchup because you know Team Liquid have mismatched strengths with 100 Thieves and they're going to blow you out in the early game? Is that actually a positive, or is it a negative because you know even when they get these big early game leads, they're going to throw them? Which force is stronger?
So
100 Thieves basically build to catch games.
yeah,
That is
my problem is they don't do anything proactive to capitalize on mistakes or anything.
yeah. They build, like I said, they built literally to catch.
They
games.
got nets.
Yeah.
They don't build to be proactive.
They go into the river with a net and they say, "Jump in, fish."
I don't think they're good at catching either, though. They go out to go
So
fishing.
that's got some holes in it.
And they
They're
don't
still
have any
waiting.
tools. They go out
Any
fishing
fish-
with their hands.
any
man.
fish
They're
wanna
just
jump in my net with holes?
I sure hope a fish will jump out of the ocean into my boat. That's
Yeah.
100 Thieves game plan to win games.
Team Liquid, they're jumping all over the place. Pretty floppy fish, okay?
They might-
Those
in the
whales
boat.
are beaching themselves.
It's
They're
fine.
just ending up on beaches for no good reason.
It's definitely possible, but it's. I don't know. I just don't see 100 Thieves as this like wax on, wax off team that's going to capitalize on your mistakes. It just feels like most of their games, they do nothing early and then they roll over and die.
Yes, that is true. Team Liquid is 2-0 against them this split, but last split they were able to beat Team Liquid in some games, basically with this approach where they had scaling, and Bjergsen I think was a much,
They were a
much
lot
better
better
mid
last
laner.
split.
They were, I agree, but I think the overall idea can still work in a series if Team Liquid and like APA really is frazzled. If he comes into a second series and looks like how he did in this first one, and
Yeah.
closers being aggressive and like abusing this potential weakness in the mid lane, and top is someday I think can do fine into summon. I'm actually assuming the drafts are okay. I'm not super worried about topside because
I think someday is good.
Yeah.
But I'm always like the extra positive someday enjoyer, I feel like.
But I think like these two have had history playing against each other, and someday is not going to get like frazzled because like so.
he was the one who pulled out the Malphite that, like you were saying, was the big deconstruction of MVP Summit.
Yeah.
And then everybody like copied the someday blueprint versus him.
Yeah, I think bot lane is one where it's a little scary because Core and Yan are usually pretty good, and Busio is sometimes a little hit or miss. But if he has a good series, I also don't like. Like it feels like other than mid lane, 100 Thieves can mostly stack up versus TL. It's the early game and then it's the mid lane. If Quid
Other than
can't-
mid lane, but that's saying if Closer plays way better than he did all split. Because
Yeah.
Closer couldn't stack up to any jungler this split.
No, I mean I'm with
Right.
you, but you're just basically saying like if the Viego game is the closer we get in this
Yeah.
series, then I actually think they legitimately have a place
Me too.
to win because TL is not clean, and
Yeah.
so if they can contest the early games a little bit more, they can do it. But it does feel like an uphill battle. Otherwise, you're like, what are the angles? Because I don't think you can copy. Just be Palafox. Quid, go ahead. I don't think he's going to be able to abuse a Tristana the same way.
Yeah. I think that's really the tough thing, right? And first blood participation or whatever for the split was 5%. It was the one game. It was the Viego game, right? So he did get his one, but
On the board, baby.
yeah, he's on the board. So that is the tough thing, though, right? If Closer can step up, and I know it's always in the back of your mind because Closer has been so good in playoffs. And I know you had talked about this when we talked about this before, that hey, Closer has these bad stretches. I do not think he's ever had a stretch like this.
This is
It's really stretched out. He just keeps stretching it.
I just
it never quite snaps back the same after you stretch it out like that, Hopefully he snaps back, but he's done it before. He's snapped back before.
Yeah.
He's had
As you get older, less and less
Yeah.
likely to snap back.
yeah, you don't wake up feeling the same way.
Skin's a little more wrinkly,
Yeah, you
wrists
got-
a little bit more creaky.
pick up your
those
cat, you
face
hurt your
roller-
back,
Yeah, we'll see. I think it's TL 3-1 or 3-0.
Yeah,
most likely.
I think it's probably going to be a 3-0, but TL's not super consistent.
I also think angle about mental boom as well for this team, given that
True.
I don't know how TL mentally
Which
handle for TL. I think 100 Thieves are coming in with like underdog, like we've been bad all year, but this is this, but
You
like
think that's good?
I think it's better than TL getting.
We've been bad all year.
Oh, they're coming in with this mentality. Oh yeah,
Let's go, boys.
we've been bad all year.
We're bad all year.
They wouldn't say it like that. They would frame it being
we
like,
suck. No one expects anything from us. We're not proactive. We don't have a game plan.
No chance
Let's
at
go.
mental boom if you already know you suck.
There's like a way
Get
to
through
say
these
that.
3 games, and we got lots of months of vacation.
There's a way to say that better that they can do that I won't do for them. There is a way to frame that better. But for TL, you just lost a series in a pretty bad way, and I think it could have lasting effects heading into this week.
Yeah.
Whereas 100 Thieves just limped into playoffs. They didn't have a bad series to start.
True.
They just lost to Dig in the tiebreaker.
They didn't have a series to
Mental
start.
fine, completely. Yeah.
Yeah,
We're already
undefeated
at the
in
bottom.
playoffs.
It get worse.
There you go.
Doesn't hurt that much.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see if 100 Thieves can kind of surprise us a little bit. The Saturday matchup is EG versus Cloud9. This one's going to be a banger. It's interesting because normally you don't get such high seedings kind of meeting up against each other this early on, but Cloud9 chose this side of the bracket knowing that they might
Because they were
potentially...
scared of energy.
And TL, they lost games to both those teams, right?
Yeah.
So,
4 of their 5 losses this split were to them, and 1 was to Golden Guardians, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, I believe that is it. So they are going up against EG C9. That is the kind of big, I think, matchup or biggest matchup for this weekend. It's going to be really, really interesting. I do think C9 again is very heavily favored because it's kind of like JoJo is the only real I think area that you're looking at as an angle of attack.
Revenge is gonna beat you up.
I had 18 kills on Jax, goddammit. What else do I got to do?
He got some words for you, buddy.
You see my Aatrox game?
I know Revenge really wants the credit, and I really like Revenge, and I think that
but he's
he can
not
get
gonna
there.
give it to him. He's
No,
like,
but I'm not gonna give it to him.
I heard that interview.
I'm not gonna give it to him. He had one great game, right? But the reality is, if Revenge wants to be like considered one of the best top laners in the league, he has to bring it consistently, and I don't think he did at this split. Like, he has some really great moments, and his Jax team was incredible, but you can't hang your whole season on one game. And the reality is, he has a lot of situations where he puts himself in a winning spot, and then he throws it away through over-aggression or through a mistake or whatever. And I think that is something that people are going to, kind of take away from him. I think he's a really good player, and I think he can absolutely get to where he wants to be, but I don't think he's there yet.
I
still think Fudge had a better season than him.
It's funny because when you said he had one really good game, I thought you meant the Aatrox game. Because I thought the Aatrox game was more impressive
Than the Jax game?
than the Jax game.
I was-
JoJo was doing a lot of work in the Jax game, setting up a lot of these kills and being super proactive on
Yeah.
his Silas. But the Aatrox one, to me, I was like, oh, wow. Like,
I just say one good game because I see so many people referencing the
18 kill
kill.
Jax game? Yeah. I thought it was 2 good games.
Yeah, he's had more than one good game in the whole season. I'm not trying to say that.
Yeah. I also know because I was watching Fudge streaming afterwards, and he was very sarcastically like, "Oh man, I gotta practice for Player of the Series Revenge going up against Revenge this weekend. What am I gonna do, chat?" Type of stuff. So Cloud9 and Fudge are not.
I got to go
impressed
find those clips
also.
to put in the analyst
I mean,
desk.
I think he's really good, right? I think he's a solid top laner, but I don't think he's favored against Fudge at all. And I think that Cloud9 has showcased over the last couple of years that they are really good at actually prepping for playoffs and prepping for what they want to do game plan wise. I think that it's definitely a concern for EG that. I think JoJo has done an incredible job of absorbing pressure and being able to kind of like deflect the attacks that have been thrown towards him. Mm-hmm. But if there's one team that I think can really do it, maybe more than, well, I guess I should say Golden Guardians is up there as well. But Blabber and Emenes, I think, can craft a plan to really kind of attack and try to pin down JoJo. And as long as JoJo isn't taking over, I heavily favor C9 bot lane. I favor C9 top lane. I favor C9 jungle very heavily, right? So I think that there are a lot of difficulties here for EG. I think that they would have to have a really good draft plan, and I think JoJo would have to Hulk out, and I think Revenge would have to have another series like he had, because he did have a really good series, right? The Jax team was great, the Aatrox team was great, but...
Yeah, I think that EG and Revenge did prove that they have another way to win games, and he is a viable carry. He's not more important than JoJo, for sure. But I think it is important that they did prove that, they can also do top lane carry. And Unforgiven has been a good, reliable AD carry.
I don't think Unforgiven had a good series, though.
He didn't have a good series, but he has had a good season, to me. And so his body of work, I feel like, is pretty good. Going up against Berserker, obviously, is...
tough.
Very, very difficult.
Especially when you're not a laning focused guy, right? Because it's like, then you're basically just trying to out team fight Berserker.
My point is that the area I'm most worried for EG in is actually jungle and their jungle situation. And I'm not even sure. I could definitely see a world where they swap their jungles mid series. If if they're having problems, because I think that is going to be the biggest issue for EG, especially even looking at their series previously versus TSM. They were having rough issues with some jungle diffs. We're talking about how good Boogie was from the TSM side of it during the TSM dig preview that we just did. I think that doubles as well for a big, possible weakness here for EG. I don't know about their situation, how much scrim time they've been splitting, or what they, what direction they want to go with. I know that they have said that they feel like the team fighting is better from Shaden, but versus Blabber, you are going to have to deal with these issues a lot earlier than getting to team fights.
Yeah, I think Armeo, for people who don't know, he did play a couple playoff series with Team Liquid when Santorin had his migraines, and he stepped in and he did fine. And so he's done that before, and so maybe that is a nice fallback plan. But it is true that Shaden did have a rough series for his opening one there. Felt like you escaped with the skin of your teeth because it is a 5-game series that more people aren't looking at you closely for what caused EG to lose this series. No one's really asking that question because you won. Hey, great. But it is, looking forward, scary that happened. I think Ayla was pretty good, actually. He was maybe, I thought, the third best player in this series. It was JoJo and Revenge obviously played pretty good series. Ayla, I thought, had a lot of good engages and stuff. But otherwise, the C9 does feel favored almost across the board, aside for mid lane, probably.
I think Ayla down the stretch in the regular season was not good. So I don't think you can say that he's even with how his Van was performing.
No, I just mean that in this TSM series, he was not a problem. I actually thought he was fine.
Yeah.
I think it's mostly the shade and stuff, the draft things, these kinds of questions, early games. I think the C9 angle, all pro voting came out. People always have their thoughts and stuff. And I feel like C9 this split got more negative opinions about the placement of their players than they usually get. I felt like a lot of people were like, oh, River was actually better than Blabber too, was one of the areas that people were arguing. People were saying Emenes shouldn't have made it to All-Pro, and Palafox should have made it. I personally put Insanity. I didn't have Emenes on my ballot either. But what's crazy to me is
how are they winning then?
That's my question, is if they, if Licorice is better than Fudge, and Gory's better than Emenes, and River's better than Blabber, and he's better than Sven, why is Golden Guardians not the #1 seed? Why are they not the best team in the LCS hands down? And I feel like people have gotten voter fatigue a little bit of C9 after they've won 2 championships and they've been pretty uncontested.
These guys again.
I'm sick of voting for them. These guys are better. I think also, to be fair to the Golden Guardians players, they are very good. They did deserve their spots. I pretty much voted the same way. But I think some people in the community, some fans are sick of C9 and they're hoping on their downfall. Berserker's overrated. I saw a lot of that using really dumb stats, honestly. And I kind of hope C9 clap EG, because I'm a contrarian and I'm sick of seeing this anti-C9 stuff for no reason, it feels like. And I don't think they're a perfect team. I think that they're weaker this split than they were in spring and even summer playoffs last year. But I want them to step up and kind of shut the haters up.
I mean, this series depends to me on how much EG can improve from their previous series. How much can EG improve in 1 week? Because if they can't, they've got no shot versus Cloud9. And they said, hey, yeah, we know there are a lot of areas that we're already looking at in their post-game interviews. They're already like, oh man, we have a lot of stuff to clean up. Thank goodness we won this series, right? Oh, we were able to get it in 5 here. So at least that is a good indicator that they already have areas that they knew coming into this week of practice they were going to focus on. But man, they are going to have had some good tangible improvements with this 1 week of practice to match up versus Cloud9 right now.
I mean, I think one of the things to me that really stood out with Shaden is it felt like he was a little bit, I think, unsure about how he wanted to play his early games. There's times where, he's doubling back, he's doing these slow clears because he starts doing camps and he starts heading towards bot side. He's like, actually, maybe I need to go back top side. Starts walking back and then he's going back and forth. It's kind of like this hesitation.
That happens a lot when your laners are asking a lot for things.
Yep. But I'm saying you do that against Blabber. He's the efficiency king, right? If you're fiddling around on top side, he's gonna take all your bot camps and he's gonna be way ahead of you.
Yeah, guess what? Blabber's laners tell him to do something and he tells them
Guess what? Blabber muted all his laners before the game started. He's like Kobe.
You hear him in the post-game chats too. He's like, but Grumpy was up. I needed Grumpy or Kruggies. Everything's got an affectionate name. He loves all his jungle.
He muted them. He's 6 camp clearing. He's going for the scuttle.
Vibing.
And he's basing. He's moisturized. He's in his lane.
But he does have his comms to his teammates though. So when he says, "Guys, I need help stealing his blue buff,"
exactly,
there. But he can't hear what they say.
No,
I mute my top laner's pings, but I ping him to come to my crab.
Yeah. I think Cloud9 aside, I think mid lane is maybe like the way that EG wins this, because I think Emenes, if I'm being honest, should not have gotten that third team All-Pro. That felt
I agree
name value a little bit and being on a good team. And I think he is still a good player, but performance-wise, there were a number of games where he did not have a good game and won that game. And maybe he had a couple good plays down the stretch where you kind of forget the early game or forget some of the flubs in the mid game, but they won the ending team fight. And you're like, yeah, it wasn't that bad. He finished 3-2-3. Great, great game out of Emenes. I think there are a lot of games like that where if you look back, he was not super impressive. And I think if JoJo's on, if he's feeling himself, and Shaden has cleaned up these problems and they can attack mid lane, that can spill over to bot lane. Like,
I agree.
When C9 lost their games, a lot of the times it was because the other team had a good lane phase in the bot lane, and then they blew it open from there. That's what Team Liquid did to them. To be fair, C9 did that to EG right after, so it's not like this is an easy game plan. But I do think there is a crack in C9's armor potentially through mid, and if Fudge really isn't having a good split, maybe he does need to be worried about player of the series. I think there are.
I think Fudge still had a more consistent split than the Revenge, right? I think if Revenge is playing to his best level, then hey, there's going to be some angles there. Exactly. The question I think is going to be, will Fudge look the same as he did in regular season? Will he play even better? I'm sure that Fudge and Emenes are walking away from it thinking that they didn't get enough credit, right? Because I know everyone's kind of talking about, C9 solo lanes aren't that good this split. So I'm sure that you'd be pretty motivated. That's kind of that bulletin board motivation, that you want to go and you want to prove that these guys who are getting a bit more credit than you, they're not so hot, right? So I think Emenes and Fudge will be coming in pretty motivated, but that seems like the biggest angle for EG is if Fudge and if Fudge and Emenes can be taken advantage of, if Revenge can have an amazing series, if JoJo can have an amazing series, I think that's going to be their way in. But I think it's such a big if when we're talking about maybe they could swap back and forth on their jungle. If you don't even have supreme confidence in one of your junglers and they have to go up against Blabber, that seems so hard, right? This guy is borderline MVP. He's kind of top 2, I think, that everyone's talking about. He's clearly the best jungler in the league to me, and that's going to be a real problem, I think, for EG.
I think EG 3-0, C9 are one tricks on Kindred, Melio, and Ashe, and they can't win on anything else, and this will be a clean sweep.
I'm going C9 3-0.
3-1 Cloud9.
3-1 Cloud9. All right. Last series is NRG versus Golden Guardians. This is the Sunday series. NRG did have a 3-1, but it is, one of these, it was a pretty wacky series, I guess, against TL. And then Golden Guardians coming in, I think, getting a lot more respect than they ever have coming into playoffs. This team is looking actually really,
as they
really
should.
good.
It's by far their best split that they've ever had. They got international experience already this split with this exact squad of players. So this is for sure Golden Guardians peak, and they deserve to be in the spotlight. Like, they are right up there with Cloud9 as one of our best teams. It's just the fact that they always keep losing to Cloud9 that keeps them out of the narrative. And people are like, they should get more credit being talked about as the best team in LC. Well, they're so clearly, every time they match up against Cloud9, they lose that.
How many best of 5s in a row?
I feel like it brings so much out of the hype when you have so many iterations of it. It's not quite to the JDG BLG level, which is like 5 best of 5s this year already in a row that they've lost, but it is a very similar, like,
they lost the one at
older brother, younger brother story.
2 in spring.
Yeah, they went 1 and 2 in the regular season this time, if you include the tiebreaker.
Yeah. But it's basically like, it is like those 2 brothers are running the LCS, but the older brother always beats up the younger brother.
But the one hope, I think, on the Golden Guardian side is that this regular season did feel like they really leveled up. Yes, they lost the tiebreaker and whatnot, but a lot of people were saying, well, tiebreaker was just, kind of limit testing or whatever, right? That's a copium take. And I do think that Golden Guardians is looking better than ever overall. Whether or not they can beat Cloud9 in the series, honestly, we don't even need to talk about that yet because they're playing NRG. But this is the best that they have ever looked, very clearly. I think, I think NRG is going to have a pretty tough time potentially. But the thing with NRG that makes this series really, really interesting is that NRG has always done so well against the top teams in the league, right? And they have really been able to kind of punch against the best teams. They have been able to win, and they had a very heavily winning record against the top 5 teams in the league. I'm going to try to go back and actually see.
They 2-0'd.
2-0
They 2-0
Guardians.
GG.
Yeah, there you go. So they were doing so well against all these teams, so clearly they can beat them. You just don't really ever know what you're going to get from NRG, which I think makes it so difficult to predict. Because I don't think anyone can look at these two teams and say, okay, yeah, NRG's the better team, right? But NRG...
But they're crazy!
And if you
non-rational.
If you really squint and you never look at all their bad losses, if you only look at their games against top 5 teams, you could be like, maybe they are better than Golden Guardians. Maybe they could be Golden Guardians. And should you only look at the games against top teams when you're preparing for the series? You think so?
No.
Well, the thing is, NRG are usually better in playoffs, and they're usually way better against the top teams. Both of those things are happening right now.
Were they better against TL?
How can you argue against that?
Were they better against TL?
I think so.
Yeah.
Compared to the problems, because when
that series was such a throwfest.
It was a complete mess of a series.
It was a messy series, but they still 3-1'd it. Yeah. And if you look at the bad NRG games, this is why you want to close your eyes when I said you should close your eyes, because they will just chain throw. Contracts will have no head. Palafox has no head, and ignore people just lose their minds on this team. They're just running around like headless chickens when they're not playing well, and they're just picking any fight they see. There's no coordination. Their drafts sometimes are terrible, where they try and get too cute for their own good, and they end up with these non-functional compositions. This team has its problems, and that's why even though this series wasn't didn't have some throws, they did fall behind sometimes. I don't think it really resembled their worst moments from the regular season. To Kobe's point, they did step up a little bit versus TL, or at least they strung together enough decent games. For Golden Guardians, I think it's so hard to find big weaknesses to beat this team in. They feel almost more stable than Cloud9 in some ways. There were a number of games that they did win late game off Stixay playmaking in the middle of the season. So I think there are times that their early game, if River doesn't jumpstart it, it can maybe fall a little flat. But he's really good at jumpstarting it, and I'm not really worried about him in a 5-game series having a couple creative pathed early games to get some leads for Licorice or Gory or even Stixay with who he combos with all his lanes very well, and you can basically count on him making plays. It
should be a fun jungle matchup too, because I think both these guys are. I think Contract is always down to get crazy, and so
you want to get crazy, bro?
Yeah. So River is gonna be looking for these ankles, and I think Contracts will too, right? I think he can kind of escalate the pace, just like how this team, when NRG would play against Cloud9, they would have these crazy series because it would just be him and Bliver going right at each other, right? And it just kind of escalates. And I think we might get a bit of that with Golden Guardians NRG, which would be really, really fun as well. I do think that, again, I have concerns about Dokla. I think he was. Is it fair to say? Yeah, I would say he was better than I expected against Summit. But I do think Licorice has worked really, really well for Golden Guardians. He's willing to go for those counter picks, so that could be potentially a problem. I do think River Gory as a duo is just so strong. I don't think Palafox is going to be able to get the same level of impact that he had against TL, because he really dominated APA, and I think it would be very tough for any mid laner to be able to do that against River Gory. And the bot lane, I think, is looking pretty damn solid. So it's going to be tough to attack, but NRG has shown that they can really rise to the occasion and play against the best teams. So that's what's going to make this series so unpredictable. And to me, this is actually the hardest series to predict out of any of the 4 this weekend, just because I know that NRG does really bring their best when they play against high-level competition.
I think one of the biggest things specifically about the top lane matchup that's even more difficult for NRG to handle than it is versus Team Liquid, where Summit is pretty resource heavy. Piotr's going to be up there a lot, so you have a lot of counterplay elsewhere. If you just say, you know what, Dokla, you're going to play weak side this time around, try and give up the minimum. Licorice does not need the same resources and is so much more flexible. Like, they have utilized him really effectively with counter picks. They have also utilized him really effectively without a lot of resources. So I feel like that's even more difficult than the series versus Team Liquid, where you kind of know what you're going against. Piosik spending a lot of time up there, and Summit always trying to play so aggressively. I feel like Licorice is just more versatile.
Yeah, and he, like you said, River can either camp mid or camp top, and it's a little bit harder to predict. I think the Licorice Dokla one will be interesting. I feel like Licorice's counter picks are simultaneously crazier sometimes, but also better for team situations. Like, as good as Summit is, he actually doesn't have like a crazy champ pool. Like, he has his Summit champs, like the Gnar, the Kennen, Rumble, Jax, and they're all.
His Licorice, to be fair, he just plays Jax a lot.
Well, he does play a lot of Jax, but he also will bust out a Yone or like random. He was the first one to pick up the Rumble way back in Summer Split playoffs before anyone else other than Shanji was playing it. You know, so like while
Poppy,
it's
Gwen.
yeah, like while it's meta now, Licorice is on the cutting edge of top lane meta, and so I do think he's even a little bit harder to prep for than Summit in that sense. Not just in game, where is the resources going to go?
He's versatile.
Yeah, but like they can do a lot of different things with their draft. He doesn't need counter pick, and when he does get counter pick, it's not necessarily the meta counter pick. So I do think it'll be a tough series for Dokla, but I think so much of it just comes down to Contracts and Palafox if they're vibing. Because Contracts starts playing the Ivern, starts running around. I don't know, just starts throwing wrenches in River's game plan.
What did you think of the NRG strategy to leave open Kai'Sa every time and just give over Kai'Sa? Because FBI was on this thing where he was like, you know what? I can do the Xayah Kai'Sa matchup, but he really likes Ezreal, and he kept on doing the Ezreal into it, whereas so many other teams on this patch are just like Kai'Sa prio through the roof.
So the Kai'Sa seemed a little overrated this weekend. I don't know if that was the teams picking it or the champion, because globally Kai'Sa is very high prio, and so it's probably the teams picking it, but it didn't look great not only in the TL series, but also the TSM series. It got through and was like kind of whatever. So I kind of like the Ezreal answer. It did better in lane than I thought it was. The first time Ezreal was locked in, I was like, ooh, Ezreal into Kai'Sa, you can just get jumped on and murdered, because that's usually what happens in the mid game. If the Kai'Sa gets ahead, you land one Prey Seeker, you jump in, pop your Q, Ezreal shifts away, you go invisible, run after him and keep shooting him, and then you win, you know. But if the Ezreal wins the lane phases and you're ahead of the Kai'Sa and you're taking turret plates, it didn't look as bad.
And Stixxay was jumping on him in some team fights, like Arcane shifting or FBI. Yeah, excuse me. I actually think of Stixxay a lot with Ezreal's too. Yeah. So that one might actually even be able to go both ways.
Yeah.
But yeah, he made it look pretty good both in team fights and in lane phase. I felt like.
Yeah, I thought FBI was playing really well in the Ezreal overall. Yeah. I mean, he had some kind of moments, but FBI. I feel
there's like that one shift that people kind of made fun of him for when the Jax came out of GA.
Yeah.
But I was like, also your crash down from Ignar was early, and like everyone else didn't CC him. So I
don't think it was just that one. I think he had a really
well. That was one that I saw people talk.
Dragon team fight.
I'm not saying that was one that people gave. I'm saying that one was BS to shit on him for.
But it's interesting, right? I think the Ezreal worked well for them. As far as the Licorice champion pool thing, I was just going to touch on. I mean, to me, Licorice is basically just playing LPL LCK meta for top lane, right? Where it is just way more popular to just pick Jax all the time, and just basically, if you think you're good enough at Jax, they just feel that they can play it all the time, right? Like, if you're looking at LCK, for example, Jax is the second most played. It's actually above Cassante. Renekton's number one. Renekton's number one, I think, pretty much most leagues. In LPL, it goes Cassante, then Renekton, then Jax. In LCS, he had about half the total plays of Jax, right? So he had 8 plays on it. It's been played 17 times in the LCS. And LEC, for some reason, the stats aren't actually loading for me, but I think LEC is more similar to LCS in that it's a lot less Jax than LCK and LPL, at least last time I checked. Unfortunately, I can't load right now. But he just kind of plays more that style, and it'll be really interesting to see if he is like kind of cooking up something different, or if he just now is kind of in this zone of like, nope, you're just really good at Jax and you're just play that and you're better than your opponents.
Probably. I mean, he played before the Gwen game 5 straight Jax games, and before that 4 straight Cassante games.
Yep.
So his last
That's
10
LPL,
games
LCK, baby.
is those 2 champs and then 1 Gwen game.
Yeah, and then the other picks around that are these like
Poppy Gwen.
Right, exactly. And so he is very versatile. He can use a lot of these double angles. It's just that you don't need to if you're going to be offered this every time,
Yeah.
right? And that's how you get into these patterns. And then if you're in a pattern for a long time, people start to be like,
What if we ban that?
but yeah, what if we ban that? Can he still play other things? Oh yeah, he still can play other things.
It's also interesting because both the games that they played against NRG, they lost, and he played Jax in both games, right? So, are they worried about that at all? Are they going to be cooking up something special to actually bring out against them because the fact that they went 0-2 against them in the regular season?
Yeah.
It's gonna
I
be
think
interesting.
top laners, though, in general, I think top laners should look at LPL even more than other roles. Top laners and AD carries especially, I feel like, should really be following that meta.
Yeah. I am pretty confident in Golden Guardians. I know NRG beats top teams, but even on the point about them playing better in playoffs, I feel like that's actually usually not true because they hadn't had a big series win yet in playoffs over anyone when it really mattered.
They keep fighting Cloud9.
They do,
And they keep pushing Cloud9.
What about their big series win over Team Liquid?
They keep pushing Cloud9 further than other teams push Cloud9, Mark.
They push them, but then they
And
don't.
they beat TL.
They don't win.
What
and
about
then
their massive
they lost to TL
history-changing win?
In summer. They lost to TL last year.
Yeah, but-
and then they couldn't qualify.
We're in summer this year, Mark.
Or was it TSM? I forget. They lost to someone last summer. I think it was
Doesn't
TL.
even remember now.
Exactly my point. It was such an inconsequential series that they lost, that they don't win all their big series. Like that can happen. So I don't truly
that's
believe.
fair.
I want NRG to like actually beat, because even the TL upset was like, it was a close series.
Yeah.
I want them to do their Golden Guardians moment, where like
Yeah.
Golden Guardians had that win where they took down TSM, and you're like, oh shit.
They need their Eric
I
Ritchie
mean,
moment.
that is a fair point. Maybe I give previous iterations too much credit for like pushing Cloud9, and I'm like, that's your accomplishment. That's how you look good in playoffs. Is like, wow, you did better against our best team than a lot of other teams did.
I mean, the reality is that's more of an accomplishment than most teams have, because most teams are not competing for the championship.
Well, some teams.
Right.
Some teams actually are in the finals, though. That's my point. It's
Yeah.
like this team has not even made a finals
Because
weekend
they didn't
yet.
have to fight Cloud9 yet.
Yeah, there you go.
Maybe there are these things called losers brackets, and some teams make it through losers bracket. They got clapped up by an EG in spring last split.
Who
that
then won?
No, that imploded. The spring that just happened, they lost.
Okay.
This spring, I should say. My bad.
Yeah.
But this spring, they lost in the losers bracket to EG 3-0. They got absolutely pooped on, and then EG blew up in the offseason because that roster
Wasn't that
whatever reason-
when JoJo was just going crazy?
No,
was
they
that
were-
that series, or was that a different? I'm thinking of a different
No,
series,
they were
maybe.
just bad.
Oh.
Remember, JoJo in spring was like erratic as hell.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Is like people go, oh, they pushed C9, and then don't look at the series that they actually got knocked out of playoffs in, which has happened twice now. And
Yeah.
so my point with this is, until NRG actually does something big,
Yeah.
I'm not going to predict them to win.
That's why I said maybe I do give them too much credit.
Yeah.
I'm not going to predict them to win either, but I do think that they are deserving of credit for more than just the C9 thing. I think that's doing a disservice. I think that's actually just.
I think they're fraudulent.
I think that's revisionist history. You have to look at, like, it's not just that one example. It's not like, oh, one time they did good against one good team. No, they're 2-0 against Golden Guardians in the regular season. No, they actually beat Cloud9 in the regular season.
I say they underperform in playoffs.
Sure,
This
sure.
whole started with that actually they do well in regular season, and then they don't do well in postseason. That's the whole basis of my argument. It's like, I don't
Yeah.
care if you 2-0 in the regular season. When you play these teams later,
I
you
don't
drop
think
games.
I don't think going 5 games against Cloud9 is underperforming, though. So I would disagree with that.
No.
There's other examples, but yeah.
No, that's what I'm saying. There aren't. They do well against Cloud9 twice in playoffs, and then they lose to other teams in playoffs, and people don't talk about that. They just talk about the fact that they pushed Cloud9. But like, why did you also then lose to EG 3-0?
Well, I mean, the split I think that everyone talks about, wasn't it? Here, I'm just gonna look it up, but it was spring 2022, right? It was last year, where they went.
No, it was summer. It was summer. They pushed C9.
No,
C9
I'm
won.
gonna look this up.
EG won in spring.
Yeah, I know. That's my point. Is that they barely lost to Cloud9.
They were 8th place in spring last year. They didn't even make playoffs.
Am I misremembering?
Yeah, it was
Oh,
summer.
okay.
They
It's
played
summer.
C9 in summer, and then they lost to them in the first round. But people were like, hey, close 5-game series.
Yeah.
And then they played TL, I think, in the losers bracket and lost in the 5-game series again. And they dropped a critical game where Luger inted. And then the team, has, in some content,
Yeah.
insinuated some of those reasons were the reasons that Luger is gone now, and FBI was brought in.
Yeah.
But then they had another close series in spring against C9. They pushed them.
So CLG didn't get 3-0 by
I think
EG, by the way,
I think it's a fair point.
in summer. It was they went 3-2 against C9, and then they lost. Then they
In
beat
spring.
GG in summer.
No, this spring they got 3.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, like you said, that they only had really close series against that, which I didn't really think was fair. So they lost to TL 3-2 in summer. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, is that their accomplishments, though, are just pushing Cloud9. That TL roster that they lost to didn't even make Worlds. They weren't like a great team. They got 4th place in summer last year. So, like, that's not a huge accomplishment pushing that team to 5 games.
Yeah, I think it's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I don't think it's fair, but sure. Yeah.
Why? I would love to know why you don't think it's fair. To
Because
say
I think you're using this as a massive detractor from this team, and the reality is there's like 2 teams that have any like massive big accomplishments in this span, right? Like what are the teams that you do give credence to then in playoffs over these last couple of years, right? Because it's like Cloud9 who wins everything, and then 100
Thieves made finals that
and
summer.
then Golden Guardians won one time.
Golden Guardians,
Right,
100
so
Thieves,
3 teams.
FlyQuest went further than last split. Like, I think teams have done more, and I'm not saying that NRG is terrible. I'm just saying they haven't actually done anything super impressive in playoffs.
Yeah, but people give them that credit because they're a team that is below the top, that is still competitive and makes things interesting, right? It's there. Like, no one is saying, oh my God, NRG almost beat Cloud9 that time. They're the second best team in the league. People are saying, no, NRG isn't just one of these teams that stumbles into playoffs and gets absolutely shit on 3-0, 3-0 by everyone, which is what people think about the bottom of the league, right? So I think, to me, that is the thing. It's like you're painting it as though people are pretending that they're a top team. I don't think anyone is pretending they're a top team. People are
but
just...
you're doing the same thing by saying that they're going to stumble into playoffs and get 0-3. I don't think people say that either about NRG. No one says that they're a bottom team.
It's a differentiation between the bottom and the top, right?
Yeah, I think that they are firmly middle, and I think that they haven't yet had their big breakout postseason moment. They lose to teams in postseason who finish lower than them in the regular season. NRG was lower than, or EG, excuse me, in spring was lower than them in the regular season. And if I'm not mistaken, in 2022 summer, I believe TL was also lower than them in the regular season. Now, part of this is also due to those teams just underperforming, arguably, which is, you can debate that if you want. But
I guess I feel like if we're comparing, okay, so think about...
Oh, no, they finished above them in the regular season in summer. I stand corrected.
If we're looking at this series and NRG versus Golden Guardians, and we're looking at the placements coming into playoffs...
Also in spring, they were tied in records with EG.
Yeah. Well, there's that big clump with 100 Thieves that EG.
Yeah.
NRG
so it's not even
are seeded 5th, whereas something like Team Liquid seeded 3rd. If both those teams were playing Golden Guardians, I actually feel like there is a bigger chance of upset
from
NRG than with Team Liquid, despite that seeding.
Exactly.
And
that's what people are talking about, and that's what I'm talking about, is that teams that are around them in the standings, other teams that are around them in the standings, you generally give no shot to, right? But NRG, you're like, hey, I could see it because they have these really good games against top teams.
Yeah.
Again, it's not me saying that I think that they're going to go to the finals. I don't think that they are, right? But like, on their best days, they clearly have shown that they can push the best team in the league to limit. And I think that is what is exciting about them. And I think it does a disservice to kind of like just wipe that away and say, they're not that good, right? Because no one's saying that they're the best team in the league, but they could beat the best team in the league.
I'm glad we worked through this. I feel like we're now closer for the
I don't think Mark
I think this is
agrees at all.
golf. No,
Mark doesn't agree at all.
I think the perspective I have is you do it in the regular season, you don't do it in the postseason.
I feel closer to both of you.
There's a chasm and Kobe is a bridge. I think that's why this is a good series, though, to see what will happen, because I would love for nothing more than for them to actually do it, because I love the players on this team and like the angle that the roster, it's a carryover from the CLG roster, to be fair, but like when they went from 8th and they added Dokla and they surged to 4th, they were the first team to do this, like, people believe in any talent. Technically EG did because they had Danny and JoJo, but like they had a ton of imports there too, like obviously Impact and Inspired or you can't just like hand wave away where some of the success came from, whereas NRG really was, when it was CLG, 5 NA guys basically in a dream kind of
5 NA can win.
5 NA can win. Luger obviously not NA, he was TCL, but he came up through the academy system. Whatever, splitting hairs at that point. Point is, NRG was the team that a lot of people believed in first in a lot of ways. So I do want them to succeed and do it in postseason.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be a fun series, right? Again, we disagree on how to see
Golden
these
Guardians
teams.
is what I'm saying.
I think Golden Guardians is gonna win as well. I'm gonna go 3-2, but at the end of the day, I think that NRG still deserve some credit for what they've done.
Yes.
They already beat number 3 seed. It's already one upset.
Yep.
There you go.
4 seed.
Excuse
All
me.
right, I'm
number
gonna
4
predict
seed.
NRG to win. You guys are both frauds.
Damn, Kobe. What is it? 3-2? Or are they just better? Are they just built different? Are they 3-1 Giga Chads?
No,
It's a
they're not.
3-0.
They're not.
Oh,
They're not.
shit.
They're not. It's a 5-game series.
I can
They're-
see Kobe looking into the future.
I'm imagining the throws. Even if they should win a 3-1 series, they're not gonna be able to do it clean.
So they should 3-1, but they're gonna 3-2.
They're gonna 3-2. They're gonna
Damn.
3-2. They're gonna 3-2.
All right. Well, it should be a fun set of series. So I'm glad we at least disagree on one of them because I think the others are looking a little bit more one-sided. But that'll wrap it up for us for now. Remember, if you're watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button on YouTube so you don't miss an episode of The Dive. You can also check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Anchor.fm. Keep sending us your questions on Twitter with the hashtag TheDiveLOL. LCS Summer Playoffs continues this Thursday on August 3rd with Dignitas facing TSM, potentially their last LCS series ever. Starts at 2 p.m. PST, 5 ET. Make sure to tune in.
Peace.